Last time I was this early, the silicon wasn't in Fragments yet.
All right, welcome to another installment of the Fragments of Silicon Daylight interviews. Joining us this week is Joan Marie of, is it JMAA or JAMA Games?
JMAA, basically. I think a lot of people tend to confuse that a lot of times, but yeah, it's JMAA.
Well, especially in the gaming space for arcades, there is a JMA harness for arcades, so that's probably what people are thinking.
Well,
Yeah, probably, maybe. I don't know.
yeah. I suppose it's worth asking if JMAA stands for anything.
Oh, yeah, it's my name. It's Joan Maria Royal Con.
I see. Okay. Good to know. Anyway, so how we like to get started is we'd like to get to know the people behind the games, the studio, and all of that business. And we do this by asking this particular question: what got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
Well, I started developing games when I was in a pandemic or something, and like I became interested in it because I was longing to be a game developer for a really long time, even before I consider making games on my own. And especially as well as other things I'm doing currently, I'm a content creator, I'm an artist, I'm like a general sort of like a Swiss knife of or Renaissance woman and that term of that kind of things, but what motivated is for making this game especially is basically making something I really like playing and just see if that actually works in some way or another, like actually see if actual people play it or something compared to other games I made, because this is not like my first game or anything. This is like way smaller scope type of game that I decided to recycle for a bit and just make something somewhat cool with it, I guess, in some way or another. But that's kind of the basic gist of it. Just try to experiment with like this so-called balatro with guns.
Like, um, how does that work?
Well, Plum Boom is a top down roguelike shooter where like you got like a base damage counter and a damage multiplier counter, and you can improve that by just getting items in game or just sort of like buying them in a in game shop, just like you do in Balatro in some way or another. There's also like a certain thing about RNG going on in the game that, especially in the terms of like number go up type of games.
Mm-hmm. Like, honestly,
Okay,
it
so
reminds
so
me.
it's like the improvement mechanism is similar because the gameplay certainly is very different.
Yeah, definitely the gameplay is different. It's just the typical numbers go up type of game.
Yeah. I mean, stylistically, this game reminds me a lot of a game we just covered, Ocho, OTXO.
Yeah, it does. Also, I heard people remind them of like Hotline Miami and the store. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
weird combination of between Balatro, Binding of Isaac, Hotline Miami, and sort of like the games I kind of liked playing once at some point. It has a little bit of those elements as well.
Yeah. Now, I think you previously mentioned that this is a improved version or a bigger version of a game you previously developed.
Yeah, previously it was a game called I hate saying this name, but at first it was like a game called Schizo Simulator, then I renamed it to Hamster Game. And sort of recycled that from that. Like it was like a way worse kind of version of a roguelike type of top-down shooter that I probably made before when I was in the formative years of game development. But like I then grabbed the same project from Construct 3 and converted it into like this refined type of thing, sort of.
I see. And what are you doing to expand and improve?
Well, it's mostly like the numbers go up mechanics in this game, or like similar things and like that. Also, like it's funny to say this, but I also added like a cool ass CRT monitor effect on the screen.
Mm,
So like it's a visual improvement in comparison. But I don't know. I just went through it with that basically.
I see. Well, how long has this version of Plum Boom been in development?
I think it has been for like a couple months or so.
Oh, so it's a fairly fresh project then.
It somehow is, I think. I'm just probably waiting for like the Steam Next Fest in June or something. So maybe I get to patch it here and there while it's still on Steam and private or something like that. But yeah, it's been in development mainly for like a couple of months or 3 months or something. You know.
Right. We get the occasional game that has that short of a development time, but not often. Like usually, it's like this project's been in development for 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I think the previous iterations of this game has been in development for like maybe longer than that. I think, but yeah, especially this iteration of this, just considering I had to recycle a lot of elements from the previous games that this is based on. Um, I just took like that basically 2 or 3 months,
Hmm. Yeah,
especially trying
that
to, especially trying to refine like a lot of the mechanics that were a bit janky at first and just make
mhm.
it especially like a mostly single player experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. Being able to reuse a lot of what came before is very helpful in game development.
Was this originally intended to be a multiplayer experience, or was that just something that was floating in development at the time?
Nah, the previous iterations of the game maybe had the idea of having a multiplayer side of like the game, but it ended up being scrapped in this one.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And how far along would you say the game is at this stage?
Well, it's kind of nearly done. It just needs a little bit of polishing, and maybe I can think eventually of that, adding more bosses or anything like that if I come up with any or something like that. But especially like enemy types and bosses will be good if I can come up with anything else. Basically, I think it's near completely done at this point, like nearly completely done at least. So if it wasn't for the fact that I still gotta polish out maybe the eventual bugs that people might face eventually or something, but it's
Mhm.
basically at the most at a 1.0 version. That's what I think it is.
That seems about where I was expecting, given what you've been saying. You know, um, hopefully polishing will proceed on time and all that. Like no major crushing bugs uh, of any sort.
Yeah, no,
And I
the normal thing that happens a lot else also is that people tend to test it, or like I tend to test it sometimes, and I realize, oh, for example, like rockets don't hurt like certain enemy types or whatever. Like what happened with the kamikazes earlier on an earlier instance. So it's basically stuff like quickly fixing that and like the rocket collisions, rocket damage stuff, and just basically
right,
doing something like that.
yeah,
And
and
then the painstaking process of like uploading it to Steam.
hmm, it doesn't sound like it should take too long, but we're just taking to general account here.
No, yeah, it
Um,
doesn't usually take that long, honestly.
yeah. Anyway, so I think there's an aspect of the game we haven't talked about yet, and that's the, for lack of a better term, the Tetris mechanic I keep seeing.
Yeah, that thing builds the levels.
Hmm.
That's like building the map you're gonna play in, and like maybe there's a little bit of an element of strategy into it, like how you want to lay out your room so you don't get that lost or whatever. Depends on how you want to play it or something, but basically, there's also an element of mystery in like not knowing what each room or each block is gonna spawn inside. You know?
Yeah. It's fairly inspired, at least from my perspective. Like,
Honestly, I had no idea it was building the levels. I just kind of was playing through and was like, oh, there's a Tetris minigame at the start.
No, yeah, I think it was. I thought it was a bit silly, but that's how I came up with the initial idea for the game. It's just, a roguelike that's basically built with Tetris minigames.
Hmm.
it's inspired, if nothing else. Like, surprisingly, I can't think of any game that, you know, does that for level creation.
Yeah, usually the seed is already built for you before you hit go.
No, yeah, there's basically no way to control the seed at this point. It's just random
Mhm.
numbers at this
I
point.
mean,
But
you
like,
kind of in a way where you can control how you want your level set up. So, like,
yeah, that,
especially as
yeah,
the game evolves, if enemies start moving from room to room, it might be better to have longer hallways so you can mow them down from afar compared to all bunched up in squares like you would normally build Tetris.
yeah. It might sound silly, but I never thought of that strategy before. I
Well,
never did. I just like to pile up the blocks in like a big giant square, and that's about it. As much of a giant square as it might be, honestly, but
Hmm.
I usually do that a lot of times instead of like doing linear corridors or whatever.
But it's definitely something people would probably think about, like, for, like, end game, or optimization if people want to get into, like, a speed run of this.
Oh yeah, I get that, and that's fine with me. I guess like
Mm-hmm.
people want to play well, whatever they want to play it. So I'm looking forward to the eventual speed run of this, if there's any. That's for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
I mean, I'm not sure how much that congrues around roguelike,
You'd be
because
surprised.
I suppose I would, but I'm also noting, like, there's a lot of random or randomish elements there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh yeah, it's a bit like that. It's just mostly the random elements of it, like the random enemies and weapons and whatnot. Just
mhm,
like it's a bit like what a lesser version of like Binding of Isaac in some way or another.
Mm-hmm. It's at that
right.
point it's less of a speed run and more of a skill run.
Yeah, maybe
Right.
yeah, that's probably a thing. Yeah.
Uh, um, Speaking of which, now are there boss monsters or boss enemies in this game, and do they rotate in and out like the Binding of Isaac, for example?
Oh yeah, they are like every 2 levels there's a boss enemy, and there's also
Hmm.
like Mr. Grimm, who's like the curse item seller in this game. But
Mm.
I'm sorry to spoil the game, but if you kill him, you might get into a big final boss type of thing.
Yeah, that's definitely something that the Binding of Isaac and other such games would pull.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
No, yeah, and
like
I'm sorry to spoil it for you, but I think eventually people will figure out. Whoa, what if I kill this mysterious guy in a gray suit that hovers over a red pentagram?
it, it's definitely something that would probably come to mind, for various reasons. Like, um, anyway, so it's also worth mentioning that there is currently a demo available for Plum Bum. Um, is that a Next Fest type demo where it will vanish when the game comes out, or will that be available, even when the game is out in the world?
Yeah, it's a bit silly because I was planning to have that demo presented for the next fest in June, but
Hmm.
I think it's still available right now. It's just probably that I never thought of like removing it after next fest is over. So
Mm-hmm.
like it might be a possibility for people to try out before they buy the game or something.
I mean, some developers do that. Some developers pull it after Next Fest is done. Like it's down to the individual. We've found.
Right.
Yeah. And have you given consideration to pricing yet?
Yeah, it's gonna be like $10 or so.
About what I would expect. Um, it's a little less than, say, well, not Hotline Miami these days, but like Ocho. It's 15.
No,
So-
yeah, and I think it's kind of like a fair price. I don't want to I want to humble myself a little bit in terms of price, but
Yeah.
I don't want to cut it short in terms of pricing because on previous games that I had on Steam, which one of it's like a demo that you pay money for to like fund the game's development or something. It's like an early access game basically. The pricing just kind of runs too short eventually, and like that doesn't really help when you have to pull the money from Steam because of the Steam threshold of $100 a month.
Right. And is the game you're talking about Johann Weiss or Sass vs. Fash?
It's Sass vs. Fash, yeah. Johan Weiss is already released and done. Sass vs. Fash is like the problem with Sass vs. Fash is that I maybe aim a little bit too high on terms of scope because I need to pay money for like sprites or like soundtrack or whatever it is, and maybe I'm trying to aim to have not just be doing it on solo, but having an actual team behind it eventually as soon as I get the enough funding for it. So that's the main problem it faces with Sesame Fashion that, and I have to say this in case anybody is watching and have probably got like the game Sesame Fashion Steam or whatever. I'm really sorry if this is like this, but I just need to figure out how to basically keep the funding going for keeping the development of that game. And I'm pretty sure now I will definitely continue once I sort things out and find a source for that income that will help sort of make it possible. It's just that I tried it many times with things like Kickstarter or whatever, and I don't have too much of a following at the moment, so it's mainly that's why mainly it's the Kickstarters are failing or whatever.
Right. Like maybe Patreon would be a more helpful option.
Yeah, I have like it's funny you say it because I have like a Patreon type of thing, which is like called the Goon Fund. It's on my website at JMAA.tv, but you can access it to become a goon.today. It's like a $5 a month base tier, and
That's a new
it
one.
helps support everything. Yeah, I think it's funny to hear because I cannot use Patreon at the moment, not only because I disagree with like the big tech type of thing, but like I used to be in the alt right before, and I did some severe mistakes, especially in terms of Patreon. Not that I don't regret about that shit, but mistakes happened. That ship already sailed like ages ago, and I think it's probably good to know because I'm have right now strong anti-fascist sentiments. And like the thing is, I was banned from Patreon there, and I cannot make another Patreon page for that. So my only viable option is to set it up on my own website.
Hmm. I suppose there's
Sorry,
also
sorry to interrupt, but I do have to get to work. Sorry.
all right.
It's been nice
It's fine.
talking about the game, though.
Yes.
Yeah,
Anyway, as I was about to say, I suppose there's also Ko-fi or Kofi. However, it's never too
yeah,
sure how.
I think I tried that before as well when I was in alt right and got banned there as well. So I don't know. I don't know. It's also a problem of the terms of following that I get because like when you don't have like too much of a big following to actually sustain yourself with that, these things are not as useful as if you were having I don't know probably 100,000 subscribers on YouTube or something like that.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, ooh. Hopefully, you can overcome that hurdle.
No, yeah, I know. I probably do. I guess it's just
Certainly unfortunate.
it's a matter of time.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm like. Anyway, and I suppose Plumbum will be able to help in that direction.
I guess so. Yeah, Plumbum is much lesser in scope, but it probably helps a little bit in trying to get that goal going.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many people scope creep too hard and then they've got nothing left and it's looking to be years until they release and like, oh crap.
No, yeah, I
I
know.
mean,
I think I heard of cases like that before as well.
Mm-hmm. We've had cases
I mean,
on the show before.
yeah, and it's not just like that goes all the way up to the triple-S to triple A, and that's what fell Monolith recently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And anyway, so what game engine are you using for Plum Bum here?
it's a game engine called Construct 3.
Oh,
It's
Ah,
like Construct 3 is like a web-based type of game engine, I think. And I've been using it for Johan Weiss as well.
yeah, Construct 3, we've encountered it before. It's not common. Like even in the 2D space,
mm-hmm.
We've had people, veer towards Game Maker rather than Construct. But
Yeah.
if it works out for you, it works out for you.
No, yeah, and like I also have Game Maker and maybe Godot or something like that.
Good
And
day,
I
yeah.
even and Sesame Fast runs on Unreal Engine at the moment. It's just that I have it easier learning or when I already have learned the ins and outs of Construct 3 when I previously worked on those iterations. So like and Johan Weiss especially. And you'll be surprised how many updates and changes Construct 3 has been facing in the last several years, because this is something I didn't realize before, but yes, a lot of functions that I didn't expect Construct 3 to have, and it helped like immensely with the development of Plumbum.
I mean, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't have a lot to say on Construct.
Yeah, like a former cast member has been using Construct for a while to make his games, so we know about it. And we've also had other Construct devs on the show.
Yeah. I mean, it's a neat little engine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like the thing with Construct, it's like it's basically used to be for Flash type games or something. For like type of games you find on Newgrounds or whatever. But I think it's good that he expanded it even further into anything better, because previously, especially the Steam integration with Construct 3, was a bit of a pain in the ass. But now I can I can build like the game files with folders instead of like a pack file. So like it helps a lot with like implementing the Steam integration or whatever. And also like the Steam integrations are now already built in with like the build of the game you make on Construct. So that is not gonna be definitely a pain in the ass.
And was there a particular reason you selected the Construct for this, or was it just what you happened to use at that particular moment in time?
No, it's just because I learned a lot about it already.
I see.
It's kind of like an engine I'm already familiar with in some way or another.
Yeah, that's how so many people still stick to Unity.
Yep.
Yeah, I had my problems with Unity as well. Like I had my gripes with it. Especially considering the CEO of Unity is like the CEO of Electronic Arts. And yeah, I have a strong stance against Unity.
Yeah. You're not the only dev to take a strong stand.
Oh yeah.
Like
we've had some devs on the show. Some of them have killed projects. Some of them have been like, yeah, we're delaying to switch engines.
Yeah. I think the heat's turned down somewhat since the guy you're mentioning, John Rosicliano.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got kicked from Unity.
Oh damn! I didn't know about that.
That's how bad this idea went.
Yeah, that's surprising as well, because at some point he's gonna step down of that eventually. I knew something like that will happen, but I mean that's what's bound to happen anyway.
Anyway, so what are you doing in terms of the music for Plum Bum here?
Oh, I composed it myself.
Mm.
Like
That's actually
it's like a drum and bass type of 90s type of music going on there. Like it's got that type of vibe, I think. But I composed it myself, especially, and it's right now on Spotify, iTunes, or Bandcamp if you're willing to look for it.
uh, and okay. Like honestly, not a lot of game devs do their own music. Like if there's ever an element that they do separately or have to contract out, it's music. We found.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always interesting when a game dev can provide their own music.
No, yeah, and I have like a huge background in music as well, so there's that as well. And what I tend to do especially is like sample other stuff that I find in other music that I find out there. So
Right.
it's certain bits are like a bit like sampling certain things, or most of my music is like right now aiming breaks and all that sort of stuff.
Hmm. And do you think you'll be making the Plum Bum soundtrack available on Steam?
It's already on Steam.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, I know. I forgot to say it, but it's also on Steam as well as Bandcamp and Spotify and everything. So
Yeah.
I tried to put it as many places as possible. It's
Yeah.
like currently it's like $9 or something like that on Steam. So yeah,
Mm. Speaking of which, I'm assuming you're just developing on the Steam platform right now. Have you looked towards, like the Epic Game Store, Humble Bundle, GOG, and so on and so forth?
not so sure I could trust those or they could allow me to post it there. I think it's just
Mm.
that Steam probably will be at the moment the sort of most accessible aside of like itch.io in
Right.
that term because the game is also on itch.io, but like it
Yeah,
will only deliver you the Steam keys for that game.
I see.
Any
And
idea if the game was Steam Deck compatible?
I was hoping for something like that eventually in the future whenever this kind of works out, I think.
Mm.
Because I think it's like adapting for the Steam Deck for me at the moment is kind of complicated. It as might sound to be, but I think I can possibly work around with that. I guess
Mm.
when demand it or something like that.
Right.
right. And have you given any thought to bringing, well, not just Plum Bum, but any of your games to other platforms, be it mobile devices or a console device?
I thought at one point Johan Weiss was like on Android at some point, but I don't know. I don't feel very well about Android at this point. The thing is, I was considering like delivering other games to other platforms as well, depending on how well they do. It's just I don't know. I just gotta see if it's viable to publish on those platforms or not. I just need to see if they work on Steam or whatever, you know.
Right, right. I mean, it is a lot more effort to publish on, say, PlayStation or the Nintendo Switch than it is on Steam. Like, though maybe not that much more effort considering what's clogging up the digital storefronts on console.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I know that. But I think I gotta experiment a little bit later when this kind of works out on Steam at least. So there's obviously that as well.
Fair enough. And I suppose my final question at this juncture is, um, in terms of your next project, is it a return back to SAS versus Fash, or will it be something new entirely?
Well, I have like a couple projects I have got pending at this point. One is Stats vs. Flash, and another is like a game called Pop Rush, which is like an adult, not safe for work, rhythm puzzle game with femboys.
Hmm.
So I plan to tackle those games later whenever this works out.
Okay. Hopefully things do indeed work out. And I suppose we'll close out by asking, what are your other non-game ventures?
Oh well, I make videos on YouTube. I stream games on Twitch. I especially make video essays on YouTube or something like that because I figure out like the best thing I could possibly do is like maybe help the world be a better place, and so like educating people at least in some way or another. I especially talk about things about current events of politics and in the scope of like pop culture and everything and like the scope of that. Or I rather also talk about like boomer shooters, like the fair decent amount. So our YouTube channel JMAA TV is like a mishmash of things regarding video essays, but all the types of content as well. And I like to plan ahead as to mount JMA.tv as like JMA Games, JMA TV, whatever, as like a collective worker co-op of sorts to create multimedia projects as well.
Well, good luck to you on that. As
Yeah.
fellow content creators and such, we know how hard it is to get your messages out into the world.
Yeah, it's kind of complicated like that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, Petty, is there anything you wish to ask?
No,
further?
I think I'm good.
Like, all right then. So Joan, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule and being with us here today. It's been a very lovely conversation.
It's been a pleasure.
Indeed. Yeah, so the game is Plum Bum. It is, from what I'm gathering, it is targeting June of this year.
Yeah, at least the next Fest demo is going to target June this year.
Okay. And it is expected for release in 2025 at a price of $9.99 USD. So, with that in mind, that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. Be sure to tune in next time for the Sunday game reviews. And until then, I shall wish you good gaming.